Hello, my name is Michael Siebold. I am responsible for product stewardship in the life science business of Merck KGaA Darmstadt, Germany. Our portfolio ranges from neat chemicals and complex kits to electrical and electronic equipment, all influenced by the EU Green Deal's chemical strategy for sustainability as we operate globally from our EU base. In this first roundtable, I will set the focus on EU-specific developments around product safety and sustainability and highlight how we collaborate and contribute as a science and technology company.
Hi, my name is Motley Blessing, and I lead Sustainability and Product Stewardship for the Household and Commercial Products Association, HCPA. HCPA is a trade association made up of about 240 member companies across the supply chain who make and sell trusted and familiar products that help consumers and workers clean, protect, maintain, and disinfect homes and commercial environments. In this roundtable, I want to focus on the importance of the consumer and the commercial purchaser. I will discuss frameworks that companies look to as a guide for developing safer and more sustainable products, and approaches that companies use to communicate information about these products to consumers in a clear and consistent manner.
Hi, my name is Resendes, and I'm the Director of Partnerships and Business Development at Change Chemistry, an organization that works with industry leaders along value chains and across industry verticals to catalyze the development, scale, and commercialization of sustainable chemistry technologies. Sustainable chemistry is the ultimate enabler of sustainability. Goals centered around protecting human and ecosystem health, reducing pollution, enabling circularity, mitigating risk, and advancing environmental justice cannot be achieved without sustainable chemistry. Right now, there is a growing consumer demand for products that are safer and more sustainable. This, in turn, is creating an ever-increasing demand for alternative chemicals that are intrinsically safe and sustainable. As part of our mission, we respond to this demand by leveraging collaboration along and across different manufacturing value chains to move sustainable molecules to market, to tackle sustainability challenges, and to satisfy consumer demand.
Hi, I'm Amit Rosner, co-founder and CEO of Clearya. At Clearya, we empower businesses, investors, regulators, and researchers with powerful data-driven insights to accelerate the shift towards safer products. Sustainability isn't just about removing hazardous chemicals. It's about rethinking transparency across the supply chain. Today we'll discuss how data technology, including AI, can uncover hidden risks, benchmark sustainability efforts, and help companies stay ahead of evolving regulations. I look forward to exploring practical solutions with you all.
Let's kick off Investment Thursday with the first roundtable discussion. So for today, we have a great mix, starting with sustainability trends, then coming also to investment questions, looking into the dimension follow the money. Should also authorities drive inspired innovation? And at the very end, we are then coming from PowerPoint to action, then also looking into the implementation roadmaps. With that, let's start with the first question. What are successful examples of sustainable product innovations in the market?
I guess I can start. I mean, from our industry, we do tend to look at third-party certifications, in particular, the EPA's, Environmental Protection Agency's EPA's Safer Choice certification. And we use that as a guide when our members are thinking about how to formulate a safer and more sustainable product. So EPA Safer Choice, it's a blue house with a couple people in front of it. It's a logo that's often seen on consumer products, cleaners, dish soap, laundry detergent, things like that. And we point to Safer Choice because it is a government-backed assessment of the safety of the ingredients in the product and a framework that includes consideration of the sustainability aspects of the packaging and both human health and environmental impacts at all stages of the product's use.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah. So
further insights, Amit.
You mentioned the package. One thing that I like is waterless consumer products. Solid shampoos and conditioners that eliminate water and therefore eliminate plastic and reduce the need for toxic preservatives. Also related to that, I would say reusable packaging that can be refilled. So you go to your cooperative grocery store with your package, have your shampoo or cleaner refilled, and eliminate a lot of waste.
Thank you. So let's now come to sustainability trends. We are, as I yesterday already talked about, in a complex, dynamic environment. So there are lots of trends. It's not easy to identify those trends. It's not easy to cope with them. And then also the most interesting question for me always is how to start a trend. So let's talk about the trends. What are the most significant sustainability trends currently shaping product development?
I think one of the ones that we certainly see amongst the retailers that we work with is this healthy home environment trend. Mm-hmm. So where there's a real focus on understanding, what are the chemicals that are in the products that are on their store shelves, whether they're physical store shelves or virtual store shelves that ultimately end up in the home. So, and it really kind of, dovetails with the in me, on me, around me, concerns that are becoming heightened, right? So I think that's one trend that is, contributing to consumers seeking out more information, our responsibility to provide that information, mm-hmm. and ultimately use that information to really identify and prioritize challenges around specific chemicals or classes of chemicals that we can work as a community to try to replace ultimately, right? So I think, and I think that shines a light on what I think will ultimately be the strongest driver in everything we do is consumer and market awareness, right? Markets cause companies to rise and fall. They cause products to rise and fall, right? So the more we can build up that awareness, build up that market pull, but really from the consumer level, like we're seeing with this healthy home environment, it really fuels the transition that we're trying to do. So as opposed to just trying to move it up from we have a new chemical that's pushed into the market, let's get the market to pull a new chemical.
I can jump in. So I completely agree with that. I do think transparency is a huge driver and always has been and continues to grow. I do think also waste in particular, it's something that consumers see every day. It's very tangible to them. And so I think that's leading to an increased focus on circularity, how to make things biodegradable, how to make packaging that can be reused, recycled, is durable enough to withstand several cycles of reuse. I think that's a growing concern, and we're seeing that manifesting in both state regulations as well as consumer demands and purchasing choices.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd like to add to the transparency and think of what's driving it. And I would say it's definitely data tools and AI. AI is practically ending the era of greenwashing. Consumers and also retailers and industry, we all have access to AI tools right now that can easily cut through the marketing claims. And this creates a challenge for brands, but also an opportunity, and it's rewarding for true innovators. From consumer perspective, today, controversy around risk-based approach doesn't. It can't really shield brands anymore, looking for credibility, and also the thing that we like in the States, lack of conclusive evidence, it just doesn't resonate anymore with informed consumers. This is something we need to understand and adjust to, not only from the consumer side, also from next generation retailers that are simply preferring proactively, toxic-free products.
Thank you so much. So consumer awareness was one topic, data was one topic. Do we currently see that this is fueling also mind shifts and also, substantially driving behavior into the right direction? So for me, always the question is to add on that, we have tough problems. It's not only the climate. There are many of them. Are we looking into the right direction? And is what we're currently doing at the very end also needle driving?
I guess
some
I can
ideas
start
around that,
from
please?
the brand perspective, right? I mean, I think one opportunity that companies see with data and with driving behavior change and mind shifts is in using LCAs to identify the hotspots and the areas that not only can the company have the biggest impact, but also the user of the product, because that helps companies then design for things that incentivize the kind of behavior change that we want to see. So one example, for example, is dish soap. It's most of the impact from using dish soap comes from consumers letting the tap run while they continue to wash their dishes. It's almost 80%. So if we can design a better product that can be used with minimal water, perhaps a spray that's activated at the very last minute, so you only have to rinse the dishes once briefly in order to get the same cleaning benefits, that's a huge win from an impact perspective. And so even though that's a consumer behavior change, companies can use LCAs and use data to identify what is the behavior change that they want to see and design their products accordingly.
Behavior change is something that's going to require a lot of investment. I mean, we're going to be talking about investment later, but I mean, you think about some of the, circularity. Let's take that as an example. I mean, circularity it's not just embedded in a product or in a product design, right? It relies on consumer behavior, right? Whether you're talking about, sharing an article, like the classic, how many people need to own a hammer drill, right? Sharing a hammer drill type thing, right? But also, what you do with products at the end of life, right? That requires an investment not only to educate the consumer how to dispose of or where to bring that product, right? But what to look for, like what embedded features to look for in products, how they're designed and how they contribute to that. So there's a huge social component that I think really needs to, move up in the narrative. Because at the end of the day, we're gonna rely on that partnership with the ultimate consumer to really be able to manifest these goals.
This brings me to the next question. It's always about early adopters and laggards. So it's activating the community. So do we currently see which people are currently at the forefront and who then could also somehow be looked like as a good first mover? Do we have experiences here?
I mean, I can't really speak to who's a good first mover and who's not. We represent the whole industry, right? And so you're always going to have people that are better positioned to move ahead, people who are better resourced than others, who perhaps have more cash available to throw at big, risky initiatives, which sustainability often is. So I think that it's a complicated question, right? You have to be able to have those resources and also have a really supportive business environment and a leadership committed to it. We definitely have those leaders among our members, but one thing we value about being a trade association is that gives us the opportunity for all of our members to learn from each other and participate in these discussions, even if they don't have the resources themselves to be the first one to take that step.
We do see some examples of, companies and brands, being that first mover, and especially when their products or services target, a particular generation. Like you're seeing that in the Gen Zs, which are, emerging as the generation that would be willing to pay for a green premium. But I think when you start talking about first mover, when you think about first mover advantage, you really think in terms of like, is being the first mover give me the ability to really kind of tout my competitive, unique, differentiating feature, right? As a provider of a product or a service. And one of the challenges we have is that we haven't yet seen safety and intrinsic safety, intrinsic sustainability, embedded products being defined as a unique business differentiator, right? We're still at the nice to have stage. I think once companies across the value chain start to embrace that as a unique business differentiator, then you really then are able to then better leverage market forces, right? So, so you asked about first mover, right? I think we're still not at the point where there's enough appetite and desire to really exercise that first mover.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Coming now to another question with regards to a justice component. How do sustainability trends intersect, for example, with beauty justice?
Sure. So one example to look at is from Clearya's previous projects and work in the environmental justice field. One area is products marketed to black women, for example. Hair straighteners, 20% of black women use them, compared to 4% of white women. And recent studies by the NIH link the increased use of these products to higher risks of uterine cancer and breast cancer. So this is obviously shows us that beauty justice is very central to sustainability. We had an opportunity to look deeper into this through the Non-Toxic Black Beauty Project in collaboration with breast cancer prevention partners, regulators, and researchers, where we used the Clearya platform to automatically screen thousands of products from black-owned brands and analyze the ingredients and identify brands that entirely eliminate hazardous chemicals and those that don't. And we use this data to elevate the safer products and also to guide the lagging brands on what they need to change. And I think this is, of course, aimed at protecting community health, but also can also reshape market expectations. Because it actually shows that beauty justice isn't just possible, but it's actually happening to some extent because some of the brands were able to pass the threshold. Speaking about the first movers, many of those are indie brands, very small operations. Another example is skin whitening products that are marketed to communities of color in the States and in other places, and often contain really harsh chemicals, hydroquinone, even illegal mercury. And so we've collaborated with Occidental College and used AI to spot and analyze these products across the less regulated corners of the web, including peer-to-peer platforms like Etsy, eBay, those places where people can sell anything. And this is a real issue that we need to collaborate on.
Amit, thank you so much. Let's now come to tools and to concepts. First thing, going out, shopping, how to identify. So what are the eye catchers that I directly then know that's a good product? And it's not only the eye catcher, it's also the underlying data we have. How to identify. So what are tools to see, okay, that's a product with a better sustainability performance?
Well, I can start. I think it's two parts. It's not just how to identify that better product, but also how do you make sure the consumer has the information to use that product appropriately and dispose of it in a way that maximizes those sustainability benefits that the product was designed for. So we certainly point to certifications. I mentioned EPA Safer Choice. There's a number of them out there that are credible third-party certifications, and Safer Choice in particular is government-backed, that can indicate to a consumer at a glance that there has been an organization that has reviewed this product, reviewed its ingredients, reviewed its packaging, and signed off on it as being a better choice of product for both human health and the environment. We also point to things like recycling instructions. For example, the How to Recycle label is one where it not just tells you about whether or not the package is recyclable, it tells you what to do with it, which we do think is very important when you're thinking about communicating to that end consumer. And for that reason, we also like QR codes. That's a way to take advantage, particularly on a small package, which beauty packaging often is pretty small. How do you make sure the consumer can easily scan something to get access to that data, get access to more specific, localized information, perhaps, on recyclability or disposal of that package?
Yeah. So adding on to the transparency discussion, I think it helps both consumers but also retailers looking at brands and brands looking at suppliers to adopt a systemic data-driven approach here. and starting with a complete ingredient disclosure, which is very challenging, as you all know. We're looking at ingredients, but ingredient lists and packages, but also safety data sheets and regulatory filing. The other thing, if you want to think about sustainability, I think it's important to go beyond regulation, beyond compliance. It's not a very high bar sometimes, and it's interesting to look at things from a hazard-based approach, screen against not only authoritative hazard lists, but also scientific lists to identify some emerging concerns. And then also it's worth benchmarking products against other products in their categories, brands and markets. And in our case, our platform Clearya Insights, so it basically operationalizes these methods at high scale. So we collect data from all of these sources that I mentioned and cross-reference them, screen them, and then help companies to see how their products stack against other products in the market, and where some better alternatives can be used as inspiration to continue progressing.
Thank you so much. Coming now to the next question. Properly describing the sustainability performance of a product, that's tough. There are many, many dimensions we can take into account, and also depending on the individuals we are addressing, they have different priorities, for sure. So looking into the vast amount of categories we are currently looking into, trying to find answers, what are the most, let's say, reliable or robust ones? We then can say, okay, I'm making a choice on that.
I mean, I think one of the carbon, let me put out carbon out there. And the reason I put out carbon is because that's just, and I'm sorry for people in the room that focus on carbon accounting, but that's relatively straightforward, right? It's, you can quantify, the carbon footprint of a process or of a particular product. So it's a very objective metric, and then as you start to move away from carbon, it becomes less objective, right? And depending on what dimension of sustainability you're looking at, like for example, environmental justice, that's not objective. It's critical, important, but also a very subjective metric, right? So we have to start, I think as a first step, you have to start looking at things which, have the maximum chance of being objectively measured. And I think chemical toxicity is one of those things, right? I mean, you can objectively quantify that. The thing you have to keep in mind is that, while it's a relatively straightforward exercise to identify a particular chemical or class of chemicals embedded within a product and then, do like our friends at Chem Ford here, a chemical hazard assessment on that particular chemical, that's very objective. You also have to look beyond what's embedded in that product and what went into the value chain that serves that product that ultimately results in that product, right? But I think that's the kind of, looking at all those different molecular transactions across a value chain and looking at the toxicity profile of the chemicals that enter and exit value chains. I think that's approaching the objectivity that we can direct towards carbon, right? So I think that's, in my mind, that should be priority number one. And once we get a handle on that, then we can start looking at the more subjective dimensions of sustainability.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then again, this leads me to the question of trade-offs. So we already had the discussion, of course. So we now know, yes, carbon footprint. Here we have mature data. We also have a strong focus on the toxicity profile of products we use. How to balance? What are possible trade-offs? Because toxicity is not the same looking into whatever dimension. So is it irritant? Of course, that's not toxic, but it's ED, it's long-term effects. It's a huge mix. And it also then depends. I'm looking at children, I'm looking at workers. So how to balance? What are trade-offs? What do you think?
I mean, from the company perspective, you can't have trade-offs when it comes to safety. Every product that goes on the market has to be safe or it's not going to make it out to the end user. That being said, right, safety is going to be a concept that is always aspirational. Our standard for what is safe is going to keep growing as we understand better the toxicity profile of the ingredients that are out there now, and we develop new molecules that perhaps have different profiles. We also want to see that safety is balanced out depending on who is using the product. So exposure does come in and it is an important consideration, right? Children are going to have different exposure than an adult user. So you need to design your product accordingly and adjust based on who you anticipate having access to it. Maybe it's designed for adult use, but a child might be able to open the lid. We saw that with laundry detergent pods earlier this past decade. So how do you make sure that you're putting in place child-resistant packaging to address that? Or perhaps alternatively, ideally, designing out a safer formula so that if a kid does get access to it, they're not going to have the same negative impacts. So there's a lot that goes into it, but exposure is a huge consideration for that reason, because you're going to have to make sure that your product is safe for its intended user.
Thank you. Let's switch to market acceptance. So we already had discussed the topic of awareness. So that awareness rising is needed. You also said, if I provide a product, it's also good to give guidance how to use it in a safe manner. So how is it now possible to understand and to measure the consumer awareness? Because that's then the question, from where do I need to start to make a product safe? What are options here we have in the market?
To measure consumer awareness and trends.
Yes.
Yeah. So companies have traditionally used direct engagement with their consumers in panels, etc. But I'd like to add two more important aspects that many companies are already using, and one of them is behavioral data. So this means to track in real time users' interest, the time they spend on reading the safety section on your website, the rate of abandoning products because they are flagged as hazardous, the time they spend in looking into other alternatives, and this is not complicated for retailers to track their own traffic, or for brands that have direct-to-consumer sales. But of course, it's more challenging for brands that don't sell directly to consumers, or retailers that are interested in opportunities with products that they don't currently sell. That's one approach, and the other one is obviously looking into digital and social engagements and trying to gauge the market sentiment, what people search for, what they say on Instagram, try to crystallize unmet needs and frustrations. These are really key today, because sustainability is not just about compliance; it's about market expectations, and the sooner we align with what the market expects, the better. We can put reformulations into the roadmap sooner, and put in the market what consumers are looking for. At Clearya, we have some access to this data through our consumer-facing app. So it's anonymized and aggregated, but we can measure some of the users' preferences and through their selections and interactions online and in store to help with that.
Thank you. Coming now to the following question. How can businesses balance cost and sustainability performance in a product development phase?
Well, I mean, there's a lot that needs to be balanced, right? It's not just cost and sustainability. It's the quality of the product. It's perhaps the widespread use of it. There's a lot that goes into it. And I do think that sustainability perhaps gets the short end of the stick in some ways when it comes to businesses, because sustainability is about the long game. Everything you invest in when you're thinking about a more sustainable product is to set you up for the future as our planet changes, and as to make sure that that product can be used in a way that helps decrease carbon emissions, but also that you as your business are set up with a supply chain that can withstand perhaps changes to the climate as we see global warming continue. So it's always about thinking strategically and thinking long term. And that's not always an easy conversation to have with the business, particularly if they tend to be focused on the short term and the short term economic turnaround. But at the same time, that's not a unique problem to sustainability. There's all sorts of investments that are based on long-term considerations, long-term strategy. And so I think with sustainability, it's the same idea. You need to make sure you make that long-term business case in the same way that you make the case for perhaps a merger or an acquisition or a new innovative product that has a different type of performance. Sustainability shouldn't be treated differently, but at the same time, it is a long-term game, and so it's going to have those different business discussions as a result.
I think one of the things, price. I mean, we need to change how we assess, return on investment around a product development activity, right? If you look at, if you head up a business unit in a multinational company, I mean, you very much focus on, how much does it cost for me to make this stuff? How much does it cost for me to market and sell the stuff? And, how much do I get in exchange? And that's sort of what you focus on. But if you're an investor, if you're an asset manager, you're looking at an additional attribute, which is what is the resilience of this business? What are risks that may modulate downward the market cap value of a business, right? So what I'm getting at is that there are economic externalities that the investment community is starting to take a more careful look at, right, as it relates to business resilience and long-term wealth creation. That needs to become internalized and brought up into the product development and design stage, where you need to start looking at what are the risks that historically have been external to the balance sheet, and factor those in. And once you start looking at that, I think more holistically, then these decisions to invest in a more sustainable alternative, even if it represents an increase in the cost of goods sold, if it mitigates downstream risks and liabilities, then that's value creation, right? Not to mention what it can do for brand value enhancement, right? So it's the kind of look that the investment community is starting to take at their portfolio companies. We need to embed some of that thinking into the upfront product design.
So it's coming from a quality dimension, total cost of ownership. Yeah. It's then one step further.
Yeah.
Can I just add one more thing to that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there have been a few different studies on what consumers actually do in purchasing choices, and particularly NYU Stern and McKinsey Nielsen IQ. And one thing that they consistently found is that there is a price premium attached to products that carry a sustainability claim. And it ranges from roughly 16 to 35%. And actually in some private label products, which are not dependent on brand trust and are really trying to sell themselves to their consumers based on that sustainability messaging, it can be up to 80%. So you are seeing that consumers are purchasing products at point of sale based on the claims that are made and their understanding of whether they're buying a more sustainable product. So brands are able to monetize this even when they're selling their products to the end consumer in the same way that they're able to monetize a better performing product.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Amit.
Of course, one day we'd like to see a world where the cleaner or the safer products are cheaper. We're not there yet, I think, but I spent a decade in solar energy, and I can offer this analogy to solar panels where, at first the solar industry relied heavily on subsidies and it was a premium product. And over time, early adopters helped demand grow, cost reduced. In 2010, the cost of solar panels per watt, per power unit was $2. 10 years later, they cost a quarter of that. And the global production volume increased fivefold during that time. And I hope to see the same pattern applies also in our case. I don't expect, unfortunately, huge subsidies or government support in this, but with or without, early adopters, yes, they care, they bear the higher cost, but they are opening the market, increasing demand, and we'd like to see experience growing within the industry and supporting cluster of services, software design, whatnot, in order for the economies of scale to eventually make safer ingredients the standard. It will take some time.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Molly. And thank you, Rui. Now, the mic is open for you to ask questions. Sonja, good morning.
Sonja from Chemsec. Amit, a question to you. You said that greenwashing will be something of the past. And actually, I can align a little bit on regarding cleaning products and also cosmetics and so on, because there the ingredients are quite clear. And for especially cosmetics, you have the ingredients list even on your packaging. But what are with other products? And also, how does it, as a consumer, how do I get the information about that? I do have an app, ToxFox, that's in Germany, where you do screen your products, but I found it really boring at some time. I rather go for a brand, decide for that, and which I trust, and then I go for those products. But how will be the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first I want to state the obvious here that consumers and the industry are not at odds. It serves everyone. Transparency just serves everyone to reduce risks, seize opportunities, and stay healthy. So from consumer perspective, I think the AI is playing a great and very beneficial role here. The first generation of tools, you had to scan a barcode, and then it would look up the ingredients in the database, and often the ingredients were not there because it's a new product, and then you get frustrated. Now with AI, we can extract the text directly from the label, or even from a video if the label is wrapped around the bottle, and in real time cross-reference it, check it again, different sources. Sometimes the ingredients are not on the label, like you said, but they may be reported to the government in very specific jurisdictions. But again, through AI, the playground is flat, and we can, even if a product has to report its ingredients just in California and you're in Germany, using this tool, you can benefit from that disclosure, although it's in a different country, or states that require companies to report PFAS. This information can then be, although it's not labeled anywhere, but has to be reported, through the Public Right to Know Acts. We can pull this information, make it accessible to everyone else. So AI, big data tools, I think this is one path forward. Another dimension is transparency for workers, which we didn't talk about today, but it's so important. People working in manufacturing facilities are exposed to, by design, to more hazardous chemicals all day long, every day, and greatly rely on the disclosures by the suppliers of the raw material that they work with. This is another information gap. We've analyzed thousands of safety data sheets that we found varying accuracy levels, let's say. Sometimes chemicals that are beyond controversy have their carcinogenicity or reprotoxicity hazards omitted for some unexplained reasons. And this is something that companies can definitely address by independently validating the data that they receive from their suppliers and communicating any findings to help other companies that use the same safety data sheets make sure that they work with reliable data. Transparency in articles, that's a challenge. It's a challenge that we have some ideas in mind how to work with, but it's difficult to there's so much to talk about, toxic content in toxic chemicals in recycled content. It's a huge topic.
I just want to pull something out of your question towards the end when you said this is a lot of information to process, and I just want to look at the brand and buy a brand I trust. That is the business case for sustainability right there, is that brand trust is built in part on consumers feeling like the brand has put effort into making a more sustainable product that's safer for them, and that also can make them feel good about being a conscious consumer when they dispose of it and use it on the environmental side. So just wanted to point that out there. You gave a great example of why consumers might want to buy a brand and why that relates to sustainability demand.
Hi, my name's Kevin Norfleet with Celanese. We're a big chemical producer, and I was curious if you could speak from a chemical industry perspective. Mass balance is incredibly perspective, and maybe particularly Molly, from a brand's perspective, how are they thinking about that topic, both packaging as well as product itself? And you kind of spoke to brand trust. Be curious how that fits into that. Thank you.
I mean, mass balance in particular is an essential tool for tracking the use of recycled content and various other metrics throughout the system. Especially when it comes to chemicals, you can't always separate out which chemical comes from what source, and particularly if you're trying to incorporate, for example, more bio-based raw materials in your formulation, you might not be able to source your bio-based version of a chemical to the quantity that you need to make your product on a regular basis, but maybe you can source a little bit of it. So it's from the company perspective, if you can even source a little bit of it and blend it with the petrochemical-based source, that's much better than simply saying, all right, I have to separate out identity, I can't combine these at all. So mass balance allows you to combine both the bio-based and the petrochemical source of it to whatever degree you can from the bio-based, or perhaps even use all bio-based depending on what your supply variability is. But it lets you account for that, and that's really important when you're thinking about how to take incremental steps towards being more sustainable and putting more sustainable products out there.
Can I add a comment to that? I mean, bio-based, I mean, I think, don't get me wrong, we need that. We need to move in that direction of defossilizing our value chains. But, Sonia, you brought up greenwashing, right? Some greenwashing is very overt. Like, I've actually walked through stores and picked up a bottle and it said chemical-free. Which the fact that I'm holding a bottle is contradicting that it's actually not chemical free, right? But then there are more subtle, I wouldn't call them, they're not overtly greenwashing, but there are things that require further investigation. And I think, bio-sourced raw materials is something we have to look at because, I'll give you an example from the tire industry. There are makers that I won't mention that claim that their tires are 30% bio-based. And if you actually dig in, they're right, they're 30% bio-based, but that's because they rely on bio-based butadiene to produce bio-based polybutadiene. But if you look at the intrinsic, concerns, safety concerns around that, it hasn't changed, right? So you're just changing the point source. So you're changing your carbon source, right? So I think that's, when you start talking about the transition to a bio-based economy, great, we need to do that. But we turn a blind eye to the intrinsic safety of all of those individual ingredients, which might not change at all, regardless of where the source is.
So thank you very much. That is already bringing us to the end of the first session, Sustainability Trends that Drive Sustainable Product Development, and kicking off Investment Thursday. Two key takeaways from my end. The first thing with regards to consumers. We have to motivate them to buy more sustainable products, and we also have to educate them with regards to end-of-life activities. Second topic is compliance is one piece for companies, but to have a good business continuity and resilience, we also need to focus on the expectations coming out of the market.